Okay. Hello everyone. I'm immediately gonna post the comment and pin it, just in case anyone has a question. They can see the message, and I'm gonna turn on the music. There we go. Just like that. Perfect. Okay, so this is now part 4, I think. The 4th stream for shading. It's going a bit slow, but for the most part I have everything set up, and I would like to basically, like, everything that I did for the shirt, the entire setup, I would basically copy that one-to-one for the other objects like the pants and the shoes. Maybe making it a bit more straightforward now that I did it once. Last time I started just slapping a texture on top of the pants, and it doesn't really look that great. I was actually looking into maybe doing some procedural textures, but I'm not very versed in that. So I'm gonna use a couple procedural or like at least tiled tricks, but mostly I am still going to use textures that I got from online, from CC0 libraries. Which, I mean, this was a very similar example where I just started using this jeans texture, but it actually, apart from this like main pattern, it has a lot of noise in it, it looks kind of grungy. And I did a bit of a trick while I was away, and I wanted to, hold on, I have Krita open over here, and I can show you something. So this is essentially the denim texture that I was using, and it's insane how much extra like grunginess there's on top of this. But there's a bit of a trick on extracting that main pattern, that detail. Like if I import this is the kind of main pattern that I extracted from this. And you can do this in Krita or Photoshop or whatever, but I like to do this a lot so I had this texture, and if anything, I would like this little bit of grunge and texture variation and color variation. I would like to add this myself in the shader by doing some layered texturing, essentially. But this main pattern, this like fabric pattern, that's what I want to use. So here's how I would do that. I would copy the layer, and I'm going to add a filter to it. And this is really just a simple Gaussian blur. And I'm going to blur this so far until essentially all of that detail, like that fine detailed fabric pattern, is essentially gone. And all you're left with is that originally, like if I have it now blurred, that fine pattern is just removed, and all we're left with is that color variation. This variation in light and dark blues. So now I can, oh wait, I need to actually look up where it is. Right, here in mix, I should like add these to my favorites. There's gain extract and gain merge. So if I say gain extract, that's what it's gonna do. It's really just going to compare the blurred version with the original below, and it's going to remove anything that compares with it, that is exactly the same. And all you're left with is the difference. So now I have this really fine, nice pattern. So this is essentially how I got this texture. I'm actually going to compare it now, because I think what I just did might actually look a bit better. I think it looks pretty much exactly the same, to be honest. Yeah, but Just by zooming out, you can really see how just like it disappears, all the detail. And over here, you can really still see the cloudiness. And I did a very similar thing with another texture. So if I go over here, I also downloaded this map, which is actually super high resolution, and I would never use it like this. It has like wrinkles, it has the fine detail pattern, it has a lot of stuff. I'm actually going to downscale it to 4096. I don't need an 8K texture. I regret downloading it even in that size. Because even here you still get all the detail you need. But I wanted to have this. It's a tileable texture, and I wanted to have this little detail here. This stitching pattern over here. So for that, I did the same thing essentially. I extracted the detail, and then I moved this part even down. So I have it exactly here, down all the way at the bottom of the texture. And this one I'm going to use as well. So this way of extracting detail is kind of nice. So, with that said, I'm actually just going to import this by just like removing the original texture I had here. And I'm just gonna drag and drop this mask in. I just called it mask because it's essentially just a black and white mask that I could use for anything really. And there we go. So by default, I'm using the default UV unwrap. And that should be pretty much good to go. I can even like scale it up a bit more. Like that. And I think it's actually angled. So if I just rotate the texture along the Z direction, I am able to rotate the whole thing. So I can like rotate it by 90. Oh, where did my mouse cursor go? Okay, I can rotate it by 90 degrees, 45 actually. And now it's angled 45 degrees. I think I'm just comparing it to my jeans actually, just to be sure. I mean, it's on some jeans it might actually not be uniform, but this is basically how I would do it now. There's actually some stretching over here with the UVs. That's not great. No, this is not great. It's the front over here. But the inner part, right here. Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna actually switch the overlay to, well, actually angle should be good. Yeah, this, I can see what's happening here. Okay, I'm gonna change the UV map just a little bit. Actually, to be honest, this might again be yes. It's not because of the UVs, it's because of the UV smoothing. I really don't know why the default is keep boundaries. Because if I set it to keep corners, it's actually not going to smooth the corners of the UVs. Which leads actually to some much nicer results. There we go. Gonna move back to the shading workspace. I see a question, do you have viewport denoising turned on? By default, yes, but I mean, only for cycles. Right now, this is the Eevee. But if I would go to cycles, which might be a mistake. No, it's actually, it's just immediately rendering. I have the viewport denoising enabled, automatic, but I usually set it to start at the third sample. So at first it's noisy, but then immediately afterwards it will start denoising. But for the material work, most of it, I'm just gonna do it in Eevee. So, now, I basically did this. I think this is pretty much the right size. And it's a nice base. The whole thing just needs to be darker. And I'm actually going to bring back the reference. Okay, the original sculpt that I did, and the final model of Rain. So here I can see some of this a bit more side by side. So for Rain, I really just used a single texture and pretty much called it a day, and painted a bit of variation on top. But here I want to do something a bit different. Actually, let's bring up some reference. So yeah, I want to have the stitching over here on the inside. I want to actually also add some more fine stitches, even though I don't think we're gonna see it that close, like this. And some acid wash, which is very typical. Some wear and some acid wash just for detailing, but that's basically it. I didn't even detail any of this up here at the top. And to be honest, because I never detailed this, I don't need this geometry. Like, all of this. I would never want to show this, so I'm actually just gonna delete this. Yeah, it's never gonna be visible. It should never be visible. It's a bit of a late decision, but I think it makes sense. In a production, I would have to like first sign this off. I shouldn't make any changes like this. Here I have a bit more freedom. Okay, so what's next? I want to add those seams back. Like here, I think I just kind of painted them in. No, actually this is modeled in. Yeah, this is purely modeled in. Over here, it's a bit more soft. So I'm gonna help it out with some normals. So, I got the main UV map. Seams 1 and seams 2. It's gonna be 2 seams maps, essentially. And I'm going to get rid of all of the seams. Move over to the UV editing workspace. There we go. Get rid of all of the pins. Okay, let's see. For some reason the chat is disconnected on my end. So, same thing over here. I need oh boy, what's going on? This. Really just selecting individual individual islands and then unwrapping them. And all of these, just gonna scale them down to 0, just so I can see what is throwaway. And I'm just gonna go through this, and I'm actually going to switch to the other UV map, like this. I guess that doesn't work. Oh yeah, that doesn't work. But I have this color grid still over here, like that. I can make the other UV map the actively shown one, and now I can see which parts I've actually unwrapped. And this is just like the ones where I want some extra seams to be visible. The vertical lines. I'm gonna later on make some more that are crossing these. Okay, like these. Oh. Oh yeah, it's actually kind of tricky. Yeah, I'm gonna unwrap all of this as well. Oh. This is where I want the seam to go along. Yes. Okay, that kind of works. I'm gonna have that one which is going right around the middle over there. So I'm kind of happy with those. Then I can just like select all of these. Control A to get them to the right, to the same size. Control P. Okay. Kind of happy with that. And now it's really just about aligning them. And for that, I'm gonna go back to the shading workspace. Okay, first I'm gonna do it with that side. Everything else can just go away for now. Up here. There we go. I can see where that seam would appear. I also see a question. After 1 month I'm watching this and the work is in a good way. Thank you. It's actually going a bit slow, but it's also a bit of a skewed perception because I am actually only sitting on this character 2 hours every week. Sometimes 1.5 hours. I'm kind of stretching it now. And that's why it's been taking so long. But ideally, the character should be done soon. Ideally. Oh, so actually one thing I forgot. I unwrapped all of these individual parts. But just to not mess this up with live unwrap, I would like to select all of these and press unwrap and then seams from islands. And now all of the islands are going to have their actual seams correctly placed. So this is kind of like a reverse way of placing seams. You just select the islands you want to have unwrapped. You unwrap them, and I'm just going through them one by one, all of the different little parts of the mesh that I want to have unwrapped. And then they're already unwrapped, and then I place the seams. But now that they have seams, once I pin them, and I actually I pin them, and I'm using live unwrap, and I scale this, the rest can just be can just properly align itself, and I don't have to worry about anything. So I can scale this up like that, and I can place the seam at the right spot, exactly there. So it's following this edge all the way down. Has a nice size, although I'm going to bring back the rest of the object so I can actually compare the size. Actually gonna make it a bit bigger, I think, like that. Yeah, that's the right density. I'm gonna save. And now, if I go back to the shading, I want to plug the normal in here. Hold on. Just like that. And you can see exactly where this line is, there's now a little crease. So that's also going to be thrown into the color, just like last time. And actually, one of the things I kind of like to do, I hope this will get improved, but when shading, sculpting, or doing anything in Eevee, I actually like to put the viewport sampling to 1. So if I do changes, it's actually immediately real-time happening in the 3D viewport, and it's not swimming around. Like if I put this to 12, like the default, you can see how this is like a ghost swimming around and updating. So if I set this to 1, any updates are going to be immediate, but that also means stuff like ambient occlusion and screen space reflections and all that stuff is going to look a bit more ugly. But yes, I'm going to now place these seams on all of them. But I would also like to get text tools back, the add-on over here. Because then I can select this face, for example, copy the texel density, and then select the other islands over here, select all of them, and apply the texel density. There we go. Just hit apply. I think it did it for all of them individually. Perfect. And then I'd like to disable the add-on again because it's actually messing with my undo history. It's a little bit broken right now, but for these little moments, it's actually incredibly useful to use it. Now, I can pin this, and I would actually like to angle some of this a bit more manually, like that. Because I want to have this pinned line straight, but the way to do that is with the align operator. But what this does is essentially just scaling it down to 0. So it's not what I want. If I scale something down to 0, it might skew it a bit. Okay, so I'm gonna pin this. Yeah, I think I could actually scale this down. Oh. I'm gonna rotate this like that. Okay. Shift W, auto align. There we go. Move it down exactly on the same spot. Now I just need to do exactly the same thing for all of these others. Yeah, this is a case where I would not want to use auto align because it's just gonna squish it over here. Like it's the same as if I would just scale this down to 0 along one axis, and that's kind of insane. So I would like just select all of this, rotate around the 2D cursor, and align it a little bit manually. Then select it again, auto align, and now it's way better. I see some questions. Will Cycles X eventually replace the original cycles? Still don't understand why Cycles X don't use tiles. Well, Cycles X is essentially just a new version of Cycles. It will completely replace it. But tiles, it's also still under discussion. I mean, they will probably still be a thing. They just won't be used by default. If it's way faster and it can just render the entire image at once, it will just do it, which is actually super nice. But I could also imagine that instead of using tiles, it will use some sort of progressive rendering. I actually need to get more into that. There we go. There was also another question, maybe stupid question. How did you learn? How did you learn in Blender? I mean, how did I learn Blender? Mostly through tutorials online at first, but I mean, still haven't completely learned Blender. It's a long process that never ends, just like with anything. But I don't know. It's like it's a big question, to be honest. Sorry. Actually, one of the things I would like to do here is I'm going to put these islands side by side. It's tiled anyway, and to be honest, I don't want these to be always on top of each other, because it will just make it really hard to see what's going on. I just need to compare it to that exact place in the y-axis where they are placed. That's it. that. Actually, I should look at what I'm doing here. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, I get that extra line over here, where I'm gonna also place a seam. I messed up with the UVs over here actually a bit, I think. I would actually like to fix that. Oh, and also, I'm gonna get rid of this seam. Let's have UV sync actually enabled. I want to see what this is. What is this? What is this? What is this? Perfect. This is all looking good. I'm gonna pin all of these and scale them down to 0. I don't need them. Like that. Wait. Let's check out my reference. Right. This one should actually be more like this, I guess. Hold on. Okay, I'm actually gonna go back to the original UVs. Where are they? Over here. So now I can just clear the seams over here. Ah, of course. I wish live unwrap would be not just a per object feature, but possibly also per UV map. That would make more sense to me. Okay, I'm gonna clear all the seams and I'm gonna say over here, seams from UV islands. Yes. This seam is what I would like to get rid of. Because I would like to stitch this back to the pants over here. So I could, for example, just press Alt V. Okay. So I could stitch it all the way over here, which is, I think, what I want. No, I want to actually stitch it to the other side over here. So this seam still makes sense. This one doesn't. So Alt V. With I can switch which island it actually snaps onto. And that is basically it. I'm just going to confirm. Like that. I'm going to save. And I'm going to try turning on live unwrap again. And now, let's see what happens. It auto adjusts like that. So now this actually transitions very well over here. Yes, it's basically what I want. And here I want a hard cut later on, an actual seam. Okay, I'm gonna select all of these and I'm gonna unpin them. Yes, that looks much better. Okay, I'm gonna save. Some more questions. Why not get this channel verified? It's above 100k and Blender is pretty well known name. That's actually a good question. I think there was something about Blender not monetizing their videos. Just kind of out of principle, and that makes it harder to get verified or something like that. Maybe there's some other reasons. Another question, is pixel and texel density the same? What is the difference between pixel density and texel density? Well, texel stands for texture element. So it's more like a pixel is really just a single color in an image, like a single point in an image. And the texel density is more like the relation between the pixel density and the density of the UV element. So if a UV island has an average texel density of 400, so like I think it's 400 pixels per UV element, like per UV face, then that's a constant. Like if you can observe that in your object. So if it's the same texel density, really just means that the size of this texture is going to stay the same across the entire surface. It has a consistent texel density. If it would start to pinch and expand in certain areas, then it would be it would have an uneven texel density. And then you can also compare that between objects. So, and one object could have a higher texel density to either have more detail because it's going to be seen more up close, so it needs more pixels, or it could have a lower texel density because it's really just a background element. So even though it could be the size of a building, it actually uses only like 500 pixels, 500 pixels wide texture or something. But yes, that is essentially the theory of that. Now, I actually want to get rid of some more seams over here. Like that. Gonna turn off live unwrap again. And I want to stitch this back to the rest. Which is actually harder than I thought. Of course. Yeah, the pants don't quite 100% make sense in terms of their stitching pattern. I hope that's not gonna be too noticeable. I mean, like if I compare it over here, the shirt is gonna cover quite a bit of the pants, so I don't think it's even noticeable that much, to be honest. To be honest, I'm gonna undo this. All of these changes to the seams. I'm gonna keep this as a separate thing. and I'll just live with it like that. Because the shirt was meant to cover a lot of it. There's another question. How long does it take to make an animation in quality such as Spring? Or how long does it take to learn how to make this good animation? I mean, we had a relatively small team for the most part. For the longest time, we were basically 6 artists working on the movie. But even then, I mean, it's a monumental effort, and just the planning and the execution, all of it, it took a long time, 1.5 years of full-time work. So maybe that can give some perspective. I would say making like a full short film all by yourself, it needs some really clever cutting of corners. You need to work extremely efficiently. Otherwise you will just not make it. And how long does it take to get really good at making that animation? I mean, if you're planning to do everything by yourself, that's going to take a long time. A very long time. But you don't need to be that highly skilled in everything if you're working in a team. So I mean, that would just be my recommendation. Try to find like-minded people that you want to work together with, and then you can make something together. Anyway, oh, and also another question, why does tab not work? I have a strange computer. If I have caps lock enabled, some of the shortcuts will just not work. Hold on. Just gonna quickly check something. Okay, there was another question. How many sampled cycles when you render the film? Agent 3 to 7 or other films? To be honest, I don't know. I'm sure for the Agent there were a lot more samples because there was no denoiser yet. So you just had to throw as many samples on the render as you can. Come on. Okay, I'm gonna continue with some of these parts. So I'm gonna make another one. I'm gonna call this one Themes 2. There we go. Clear seams, Alt P. And scale all of this down to 0. I'm going to select all of this. Gonna quickly go to like just solid view over here. Okay. I'm just gonna select all of this, like all of this geometry. I just want to have this some seams going along this line over here. So I'm gonna hit U unwrap. There we go. That should be more than enough. get that in. Okay. What else? There needs to be these down here. So I'm just gonna select these ones and just select more till I get over here. And just unwrap. There we go. So I got these. Then I also need these over here. Unwrap. And same thing over here, really. I already have... Oh wow, they're actually placed wrong. And I've been changing the wrong UV map. Damn it. Okay. So... keeps happening. That I start working on the wrong one. Okay, I want to work on this one. Why does it show... No, I think it works. I never actually checked with these if they are correctly placed. And they are not, I think. That's the one. Those are the ones I wanted to pin. Oh my god. Okay. Let's see. Live unwrap. I'll just try this. I saw another question pop up. Does this work until the rigging process? Well, if you mean if I'm going to continue working on this until the rigging starts, yes. The rigging would be the next thing that happens after this. I will probably not work on it though. I'm not a rigger. Let's see. I want to get rid of this part of the UV map. think this actually works. Live unwrap is disabled. Yes. Right, so I wanted to have these over here. Perfect. Well, that just kind of works. Okay. Go. There's some more comments. The sculpting which you did on the cloth portion won't be a problem during cloth simulation while animating. There will be no cloth simulation. That was a very intentional decision when modeling these pieces. If there would have been cloth simulation, then I wouldn't have modeled so much into the cloth. There we go. Okay, that's some more of these taken care of. Time to get back into this. Better. Okay. Okay. Any more questions? Oh yeah, plenty. Probably is answered, already answered, but it is a good idea to scale UVs outside the box that limit the UV space. Depends on what you want to do. If it's just about, if it's about texture painting, then it's not a good idea, because you will map a texture onto the UVs, and your UVs and your texture should be within the same space. If you're doing it to add a tileable texture to your mesh, to your surface, then you should also not do it, because a tileable texture will be perfect within that 1x1 UV space. If you're planning to do some procedural texturing, like I'm doing right now, where it's just about getting not a texture mapped onto the UVs, but just using the UVs as regular coordinates to do some shading, then it's okay. Then it's usually exactly what you need. But even the problem is that once you start scaling the UVs beyond that UV space, you will get repeated patterns. So unless that is exactly what you want to do, and you only can do it via the UVs, then do it. If not, then don't do it. Another question: if you use a real pent as a reference, then it will be very helpful for the UV unwrap. Oh, you mean the pants? Yes, I think I actually messed up a bit with the reference at the top, because I just relied on this not being visible in the end. And now I just need to work around it, which I think is fine. Also, another question. Right now I'm learning topology. In the retopology video, do you explain how loops work? I need some help with that, especially on turning n-gons into quads. Yeah, and if you mean my the live streams or the tutorials I'm doing for the Blender Cloud, I actually do get into that, so you can watch it there. Okay, let's see. Right, over here I want that seam along this side, and then it goes in here. Yeah, I think I'm doing a bit of a mistake here. Okay, I'm actually gonna go back into the first UV island over the first UVs over here. I'm gonna get rid of all the seams, make the seams again from this. Again, seams should be per UV map. They should be tied to that, I think. That just makes more sense to me. And what I want to do is I would like to mark this as a seam. And mark this as a seam. I would like to get this circular let's see. Yeah, this one. No, this one. I want to pin this. And I should turn on live unwrap again. And now I'm gonna do this, where I just kind of rotate this around to get it straight. And now I can press Shift W, auto align, and I have it exactly straight. So now I can place it exactly where I want it to have. Perfect. Another seam. Like that. Over here it's becoming a bit of a mess. I'll need to stretch this a bit. That's fine. And then I can go back to the other UV map. Start doing the same thing. So seams from UV islands, and then I just need to turn on live unwrap and start pinning. So exactly where those should be. Over here. The seams are right here. Huh. Okay, I need to repeat that process. Yeah, and then over here I need to do a similar thing. I want the... Oh no, yeah, I didn't plan ahead for this. Over here it kind of works. No. I will need to put it lower. Over here. It's fine. Okay, I'm gonna pin this here. Right, and these are actually throwaway. You can get rid of them. What about this one? Where's this? Ah, yeah, these are also throwaway. I don't need them. Again, if I would go to the shading workspace and I would show... Come on, why is it frozen now? And if I would control shift click on this one, I would be able to see this, what I've been doing. So these are nice coordinates. Now if I rotate this one, shift W, auto align. This one is nice and straight. Same thing with this. Oh, select all of this, rotate, Shift W auto align, nice and straight. But I don't want to see this shading, I want to see this over here. There we go. I want it to be kind of over here. Over here, same thing. A bit higher. Like right over here. Nice. I actually saw a question. Is Demeter Tzadik gonna rig the character? Yes, eventually. Once there's time. Right now we are in the middle of a movie production, so this is a bit of a side project, but once there's time it would be great to have this one rigged. Okay, so this is right now not right. Okay, so I can just select all of these, auto align, should be good to go. Just place it right there. Same thing with these. Let's see. Hello. I see some people saying hello in the chat. Sorry, I'm ignoring the chat a little bit. It's not good. I shouldn't do that. There we go. Sorry, I'm just trying to get through this as fast as possible. I would love to get into the stitches. Like these are just like these kind of valleys that I'm inserting, but I actually want to add some actual stitching. Some, not just seams. That would be super good. Okay, but I got the 2 UV maps all set up, all nice. I think one of the things that I would actually like to do is make another adjustment to the seams over here, and that is this part over here. I would like to mark this as a seam. Just kind of get rid of this. Actually, I'll keep this as a seam. I just want to make this little addition. And this is essentially what I need to add. And I just need to stitch this to the rest. I think it's rotated the wrong way around. No, no, it actually fits. Like that. Perfect. Okay, that looks better. That means I have all of the UV set up for the seams. Perfect. That means I can continue with the rest of the shading. I also see a new question. Hi, any advice for someone who pushed and pulled vertices for so long that sculpting just feels alien to them? Oh man. Man, I don't know. It's tricky. I mean, one of the things I think is, as long as you are still really efficiently at working just in regular poly modeling, there's nothing wrong with that. The great thing with sculpting, it can be a supplemental workflow. It doesn't need to be a complete replacement, because I see people who are still doing amazing stuff with just regular poly modeling. I think like actually Pablo de Barro is like a really good example, like with his workflow, where he does a lot of like poly modeling and a lot of box modeling, but then supplements that with sculpting. And I think that's actually gonna be a really valid workflow within Blender. So there's nothing wrong with that. Actually gonna make some little adjustments over here and in sculpt mode. Which is really just pushing some things around. I want to have these edges a bit more straight, like that. Perfect. But yeah, I'm actually a bit more on the opposite end. I like to use sculpt mode for just general pushing and pulling stuff because of the more dynamic fall off. It's a bit easier to set up. But it's kind of a matter of preference. Okay. I'm actually going to remove this. So this is just for the seams. I would actually like to add these. Over here. Let's actually look at this. Just the diffuse map. Aha. Yeah, just multiplying this on top. In addition to the bump map. This might be actually a bit strong, to be honest. But I also still haven't added the bump. So this is the height. I'm just gonna plug this in and see how it looks like. So this is very strong. This is extremely strong. Why? Because it's a height and this is very extreme. Still very extreme. I'm gonna remove the diffuse texture, then it's easier to see the bump information, what it actually does. I'm gonna leave the strength at 1 for now. The distance is fine, it's really about, oh actually, maybe not. I think now it's actually fine. Yeah. And then I can, so this is the vector for the normal, for the little bump map. And this is the vector for these seams over here, and I can mix them. I can add them together, which is gonna reduce both of them a bit. I can normalize them, which is gonna make them work in cycles. And then I can plug them into the normal, and now I have both. There we go. Both nicely mixed together. The procedural seams over here and the bump. Like that. I will never see this so close, to be honest. But it's good. I can plug this back in. Just to be sure. Reset color ramp. I'm gonna also finally use this for the roughness. what's going on over here. That's fine. Okay. Okay. Now that I have that, I can just quickly get into the stitches, because I still wanted to do that before I will eventually add more detail. So for that, I actually stole some notes from Simon Thomas. A few of these he has online available. I'm gonna use them if they ever become useful, but I actually want to use this one. It's good enough for the job. It's something that we actually use for the current for our current film production. It's right. So I'm just gonna append this note. I have it right here. Notes, textures, note tree. And I'm gonna look for wait, what? Stitches. Where is it? Seams. I mean, I'm gonna append it. I'm gonna put it in here. I see something. Okay, height. There we go. Getting some seams in here. Length, thickness. So this is really just using the same UV maps that I just made, and that way, like, it's also just following the same direction, and I can just add these on top. But just the UV map alone is not enough. I actually want to use a mapping node in between, because then I have some additional control. I'm just gonna try to change the size, and it actually works. So that way I can make the stitching pattern a bit smaller. I actually want to use a look at my reference. And I think I'm actually just gonna make the stitches like a light gray, like that. That should be fine. And then I can move them a bit to the side over here, so that they align with where the stitches should be, like that. But I think actually makes way more sense to have it a bit offset, like that. Okay, and then I can still make them smaller. Maybe not. There we go. Just want to see it in the shader. And also in this case with sampling, so I can get a better impression. The seams are not as small as they should be, but to be honest, I actually kind of like it how visible they are. I'm gonna make them a bit smaller. But I want to keep their thickness a bit alive. So I'm gonna scale them down even more. Because it's procedural, it's really just the say, it's mostly based on just math nodes and like creating a pattern that way. And then just repeating it over and over again. It actually works just fine, performance-wise. There we go. And then I can basically just do the same thing again over here, but with the other UV map, seams 2. So because I had set up 2 UV maps, they can actually cross each other and they can like be placed in 2 different spots. In this case though, some of them don't actually work. I will need to check on that. But that's the basic principle. Like that. So now if I go into UV editing, I can actually fix some of these. But I also see there are some questions popping up. How come ZBrush is able to work with such high dense geometry compared to Blender? Will it ever be upgraded? Well, I mean, I don't have much of the technical knowledge behind how ZBrush works, but ZBrush is designed in a way that it actually doesn't show that much information in the viewport. So the performance can actually be pretty high. Blender, on the other hand, is showing a lot of information at one time, at a single time. So it becomes kind of hard to reach that same level of performance in Blender. But in my personal opinion, I don't think for the majority of the work that you would do in Blender, for example, you actually don't need that high of a performance. Of course, some people need a higher performance. They need the top tier software to display as much information as possible on the screen at any time. But for anyone else, Blender is just working fine. There can always be improvements. But sometimes it is more of a workflow problem. Sometimes also just because Blender doesn't enforce the best or recommend the best workflow working in it. But yeah, I'm rambling a bit. I'm gonna change the samples back to 1 because everything starts swimming again. Okay, this looks nice. Some more questions. Let us have a peek inside the seams group. You mean the UV map? So for the seams, it's really just about straightening these little UV islands. Hold on. Just unwrapping some of these parts and straightening them. And then it's essentially just acting as coordinates where these seams should flow along. But what I'm noticing is that some of these are actually not the same, the right size. Like for example, hold on. Like for example, this one. No. This one. This one is not the right size at all. So I need to actually scale this way down. Didn't really pay attention there. And these also. These are not the right size. I need to scale them down. They also get messed up a little bit. It's not good. It's kind of messed up. At least I can still tweak the UVs. Well, I mean, it doesn't look that amazing on those spots. It's a bit sad. There's another question. I found your guiding topology video at the cloud. Thanks. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. Spent quite a bit of time on just researching some of that stuff. This is a little bit of a mess, actually. I did not get the correct textile density all over the place. So now the seams have a slightly different size at some spots. Oh well. Still looks kind of correct. And if I get the rest back and enable sampling again, actually doesn't look that bad. Okay, so the next thing would be to get the other textures in. I prepared another texture and I want to actually have it right there. So I'm gonna go to shading. The texture that I want to use is the one that I showed at the beginning of the stream. This one, which is a bump map for this seam pattern, which I'm going to use at some spots. So I could just like click and drag on this, drag it into the material, and it's right there. Now, I need to use the correct UV map. I'm gonna quickly just plug it into a color ramp just because I want to see it more easily where it actually is. Wow. It's all over the place. Why? Oh, because it's tiled and rotated. There we go. Now that's better. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna Control Shift, click and drag on this. I don't know why it throws it so far away, but I want to mix these two textures together. Let's actually just overlay it. I'll try that. Like that. I just want to see if it's on the right spot. Yeah, I think multiplying makes actually just a lot more sense. Okay, I'll just make it really extreme, just so I get to see. That's the main thing I want to do right now anyway. So you can just show it in the shader. And wherever it pops up, that's it. Okay. Perfect. Now, where do I even want to see it? It's on the inside of the pants. It's along the middle line. And along the pockets. Those are the main areas. So I think this one is actually already the pretty correct one. But I might just make a copy of this UV map. Just so I don't mess up anything else. Or I'm just gonna try. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna make a copy, but I also want to try just moving this away. First I'm gonna scale it down. Well, up actually. Okay. It's getting there. Okay. How long will you say one character takes to go through the whole studio pipeline? Ooh, that varies. I mean, if it's a main character, it needs a lot of attention to detail. And there have been characters that we've been working on in the current movie production for basically a year. On and off again, but still, there was a lot of style exploration, a lot of concepting, a lot of back and forth until we kind of nailed it down. And if the character design depends on the design of a whole lineup, that makes a difference. Wow, I thought clamping would actually work. Well, I guess I need to tweak the minimum values. The from values. That's it. Yes. Now it should work. Yes. Exactly. Okay, right now that's only in the diffuse, but I'm gonna also add it to the bump and everywhere else. Do you think most 3D artists should learn retopology? Thanks, fantastic stream. Probably. Retopology is an important part if you're planning on sculpting something very freely first and then making a proper topology. If you're really good at poly modeling or box modeling, then you can also just do both in one step, but that's, I would say, just an even more advanced version of the retopology skills you need. So I think as a 3D artist, retopology is pretty important. Well, unless you're really just a sculptor. If you're not interested in any of the other pipeline, or like any of the other parts in creating a character or anything, retopology is maybe not going to be that important. Come on. I need to disable text tools again. No. What is causing that error? Damn it. Okay, now I'm adding this to the bump map. Which means I need to tweak some of these things a bit more. Yes. Now, how does this look like without any color information? Kinda weak. This is better. Yes. Can plug the color back in. Nice. Okay, but I'm gonna make it my own UV map for that, and it's gonna be what is it called? I don't know how these aspects of clothing are actually called. It's a double seam, I guess. So for this, I'm going to use the double seam UV map, which means I have some extra control where these are actually placed, because I don't want them on the outer sides over here. Be gone. I want them only on the inner side. Also some parts over here. They should have this laid out a bit differently. I think this is fine, maybe. This needs to be placed differently. And I should again disable sampling. Just viewport samples to 1, and then I can see the results much more real time. That could be fine. Oh yeah, this one is important. I'm actually gonna get rid of this seam. Clear seam. Alt P and UV unwrap. I want this to be laid out a bit differently. bit more straight in the middle. I actually should look that up. I don't have references of... hold on, Firefox. Let's open up Firefox and look for Jeans back. Also, I see some more comments. The reason why I was asking about feeling alien to sculpting is I wanted to follow your stylized course. Oh, I guess starting right into humanoids is not helping. No, it's not necessarily. Well, there's definitely something to like sculpting human characters is already like a huge challenge. I can recommend to go for something more cartoony, simple forms, simple shapes, and learn that way, because it's just gonna be easier, at least to start with. Let's see. Another question. What are you doing? Just shading some clothing. Nothing. Nothing except for that. Okay. Okay. I think this should be fine. I'm gonna get the other objects back. Like that. I think the pockets are a bit awkward because they don't really follow any reference. They are just kind of improvised. It's not great. Yeah, I wish I would have done better there. Yeah, some of this is now a bit improvised. Why, another question, why only on the inside? Why they are very visible on the outer leg seam in your reference? I see now that the outer wrinkles are slightly different. Yes. I might just paint in a bit of difference like that, but this sort of repeating pattern over here on the inside, I wanted to have that at the right spots. I think that's fine for now. I'm gonna quickly disconnect the diffuse, just so I can see some of this in effect. Yeah, I think that's fine. Now, there's two things missing. I would like to add a height map, just like with the shirt. It's just adding a bit more, like a bit more of a bump effect for finer wrinkles. And I would like to plug that one into the color as well to give it some acid wash feeling. So anything that is reaching a certain height is becoming brighter. It's gonna have a similar effect as here, like where some of the higher elements are just kind of washed out. And then the other thing is just a general wear on the entire pants, so that there's a bit more color variation, because right now it is very uniform. But apart from that, this is almost it. I wouldn't add too much variation because I want these textures to still be kind of simplified. I don't want it to be too realistic. I don't want it to be too distracting. It should be simple. But I can quickly bring... Yeah. I don't have that much time left. That's the problem. So, what can I do? I could start with the color variation. And that is not too complicated. I already started with some of it here. So how would I go about that? I would definitely add an image texture. Hold on. This one I'm also going to frame. I'll call this double seam. At some point I will need to clean this up. Nodes can get really out of hand if you don't keep them organized. So I'm gonna add an image texture. Control T to get all of this, and I'm gonna add a specific UV map. The main one, because that one is just the best for texture painting. And I'm gonna create a new map over here without alpha. It's just gonna be actually 32-bit float, 2K resolution, and I'll call this text snow pants height, and the default value is just gonna be 0.5. I think that's sort of the naming scheme I went with. Let me check. Text. So for texture. Yeah. Yeah, kinda. I called the other one wrinkles, but this one will just be called height. Wow, that was actually not what I wanted to do. I wanted to add the color variation. So I'll just make a new texture over here, not 32-bit float. And I'll just have it as... let's see. Yeah, I'll just start also with 0.5. But this one, I'll just have it at half the resolution. That should be fine. Text, snow, pants, color, var. Like that. Oh, half the resolution, please. And like that. Okay. I'll just make this like overlay. Plug this in here. Have this as linear. So by default it does nothing because the default value is just 0.5. It's right in the middle. And if I paint anything on top, it will actually overlay it or like add it or multiply it, or somewhat like that. So now if I go to texture paint and I choose the color variation and I start painting on top over here, a bit brighter spots and here a bit darker spots, it's actually gonna add them like that. Okay, but that's not exactly what I want. I want it to have a bit of a wash effect. So I will add a mix RGB over here, and I want this map to be mixed with that one. Let's see, just multiply. Now it's actually getting a bit tricky. How do I do this? Color ramp. Why did it change the map that I was painting on? Okay, so these are the bright parts. So I can just add that to make that add. Perfect. Like that. That works well, and then I can make this one multiply. Flip. These are the darker spots. So I have another mask. And this is where I can multiply a color. Like that. So now, if I paint on this texture with white, it actually starts adding a bit of wash to it. And if I start painting on it with black, we'll start like adding a bit of darkness to it. Oops. Set this to ease, that makes it a bit easier. Okay, I think I actually need to do this a bit differently. Add. The only problem is there's going to be no real overlap. So whatever is dark is gonna kind of stay away from the light. But it's gonna work well enough, I think. These are also like the more extreme examples. with the white streaks. Like that. Let's see. Okay, I can just paint over this, and I will save this texture as well. And this one I also still need to save, so I have them for next time. But now I can basically just Control-Shift-Click on the whole shader again, and I can actually paint in a bit of bright spots like this. And they will start appearing over here. So this way I can like enhance some of these wrinkles a bit, for instance, but I would do this with a different texture. With this one I just want to get some general bright spots. So just like these surfaces over here, they get a little bit more wash. Like that. Interesting, over here nothing is happening. Oh, now it does. I just turned the strength way down. But yeah, you can see what's happening here. And I can still tweak some of these values because I think the wash is overall too strong. So I can like paint in a bit less. Like that. Kind of ignoring the chat for a bit, sorry. Okay, there's some more questions. Some books that I'd recommend for 3D. I don't know. Like I need to read some books in that aspect. I'm actually relying more on like online resources and various different tutorials. I would actually recommend courses much more. Do you guys always use experimental builds in production? It seems like the opposite of what is recommended. Yeah, we're always using the very latest in development branch. And that's purely because we're crazy and we are testing Blender constantly. It's kind of insane. I mean, it is something that I would not recommend anyone. And we're only doing it because it's kind of what we do. We're the Blender animation studio. We test Blender. Oh, damn it. I'm using this as the actual texture, not as a mask. I'm stupid. I'm getting this already in there better. Another question, how did you learn everything about the different nodes? What key did you, what they do and how to use them in combination with each other? I hope that made sense. Well, to be honest, starting with the shader nodes, I'm actually just using the same nodes over and over. It's really just, mostly you're just mixing color inputs. Like even just like a beginner tutorial on nodes can give you like 95% of the nodes that you will be using. It's really just going to be texture nodes, the mapping nodes, the texture coordinate node as an input to that, and then just color ramps and RGB mix nodes, and then eventually you put it into a shader. But in terms of how they interact with each other, the little colored dots are really helpful because they actually let you know what kind of information they hold and what they want. Like for example, a texture wants a vector as an input. That's basically like a coordinate. Where does the texture get projected onto and how? So that's a purple thing. Then it outputs a color, and that's yellow. The color is basically 3 values. It's like red, green, and blue. Whereas gray over here, white, that's just a single value. In this case, it's alpha. It's the transparency, and that's really just one value. And that's basically most of them. And then eventually it lands into a shader, and a shader gets a shader output, which eventually lands in the material output over here. And these are green. And that's basically all of it. There's of course much more to it if you want to dive in deeper, but overall, you don't need to. I think it's really easy to just use the default nodes, the color ramp, the mix RGB, and really just be happy with those. Okay, here is an interesting part. I actually want this down here to be much brighter. Give this more of a wash. And over here as well. Just a bit more. I like to combine these textures a lot with different nodes. So it starts to add like a lot of procedural detail, and the texture is really just used as a mask, because then you don't need to put a lot of effort into making like really detailed textures, painting them really with a lot of fine control. I can just like kind of like go over this really rough, and it will end up looking kind of good. That's also because texture painting in Blender is actually not the most robust. How the brush tip behaves, it's actually kind of clunky. So I try to get away with that a bit more by just yeah, just not having to paint that detailed. Yeah, I might need to repaint this. I'm actually not super happy with this. I'm trying to rush it a bit. Yeah. I will need to leave it at this in a moment. Yeah, I will need to return to this next week. Yeah, not really happy with the texture painting that I did right here. Well, but it kind of works. It's getting there. Another comment. Thanks for sharing your beautiful skill. Which comes first, set dressing or animation of the characters in the scene? It's a little bit of both, because well, actually neither. The first thing that needs to be done is layout. Well, that's at least how we call it here at the studio. So it's like you start with a storyboard and just planning out what happens in the movie, and then you need to create the sets and the rough animation in it. And to get kind of your bearings and like a rough plan, you start making a layout animation. That's really just, you take whatever characters you have that kind of match. Like, usually it's like some blocks or like anything that could be recognizable as the characters. You animate them in a scene that is really just blocked out. And that way you kind of figure out where things need to be. And once that is kind of signed off, you can use that as a direct reference to work on the set and the character animation in more detail. So it's a bit more of an iterative approach. But yes, this is essentially the result for today. Thank you very much for watching. Next week I will get more into painting the height map, polishing up this the textures over here so that the pants look exactly how I want them to be, and then adding the textures back for the shoes, which essentially I already did for rain, and it's just really the same principle. Also, I should hide the feet. And then once the clothing is done, I can get more into detail with the skin. I can add the textures back for the eyes and for the inner mouth. And then lastly, it's gonna be the hair. I'm gonna leave that for last. And then it's basically, the shading should be done. I'm gonna do some more turntables and some like rendering tests, but so there's still a few streams coming up, but once that is done, I can share the files. This can all be a bit more public. And hopefully the character will be rigged soon, and then I can share the entire thing. But thank you a lot for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye!